Good evening. My name is Megan Bradbury. I am the chapter president of the Hattiesburg JCs. We are a civic organization that empowers young people to create positive change within their communities. We are nonpartisan, but we do believe in making an informed voting community. So we are holding this forum tonight so that you can learn about your candidates and make an informed vote. Come on in. The candidates will have 5 minutes to make their opening remarks, to introduce themselves to us, and then we will go in number order for the first round of questions, and then we will just swap back and forth between each question. And each question will be randomly, blindly drawn by me. You will have 2 minutes to answer your question, and then after at 7:30 or at 5 till, we will have we'll have 1 minute to make our closing remarks. So, our first question. Mr. Sims, would you promote any programs geared to crime prevention for kids? And if so, which ones?
Well, absolutely. I mean, that would be a part of the administration. I have served on the Juvenile Recidivism Committee for the last 2 years, and have worked with community organizations, other government agencies, Hattiesburg Police Department, the Juvenile Detention Center, other community organizations to try and figure out ways to get children something to do other than being out there and getting into things that they probably shouldn't get into. And one of the things that occurred was a program. The Hattiesburg Police Department has had the Police Athletic League, PAL, and it has concentrated on the younger children in the community. One of the things we found in our study was that the older kids didn't really have any options available. So through the committee, PALS agreed to switch its attention to the older children, the ones 13 to 17 years of age, and start working with them, giving them opportunities to participate in athletics, tutoring, things of that nature. And that's just, the first step, and we hope to continue that. I would also always continue the Red Ribbon Week efforts through the schools, but also have deputies in the schools who are meeting with administrators, teachers, students, building those relationships so that we give the kids an opportunity to make good choices in life.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sims. I do apologize that I skipped their introduction, so we will give them much longer at the end. We'll give them 5 minutes at the end to do their closing remarks and just remind us who they are. Mr. Oswalt, you will get the same question. Would you promote any programs geared to crime prevention for kids, and if so, which ones?
Well, I most certainly would. And I would want to work and would work with any and all that are available to us. Myself, I have a desire to, if I become the next sheriff, is to implement a Forrest County Sheriff's Deputy Cadet program that would invite all of our adolescents from 12 years of age through 19 to 20. And also have a merit system for such a program, where young guys and girls that would be interested in joining such a program would work, and they would have uniforms like regular deputies do, which would be provided by them or the family, or provided to themselves. I wouldn't mind providing, helping somebody with them. But in the program, they would consist of things like the way there would be a time span on earning rank, and you earn rank in the cadet program through merit. And the merit system would run for a period of time, and so many merits. And the way they gain these merits is working in their neighborhoods and attending meetings and having our officers to alternate every other weekends, being willing to train and teach our young adolescents about the law, and at the same time, they have opportunities to become the law enforcement officers. And there's so many different things they can do as far as helping their neighbors, mow yards, helping the elderly, the disabled, whatever. But different things that we can have for such a cadet program for these guys that will give them the initiative to want to do and to live a good clean life.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oswalt. And you will also receive the next question. How would you handle staffing shortages and overtime costs?
Well, by restructuring the department, for one thing, and redirecting some funds going into areas that are really needed, and evaluating the system to see where the funds really need to go and which departments they need to go to. And one of my ex-opponents had said a while back, one thing he said that I kind of agreed with, was cross-training our officers to be able to do more than just one job. They could do narcotics, they could do many different patrol, whatever. But I would work diligently to make sure that we get it's more cost-effective and get more for our bucks and put people in positions where they can excel and do a better job in the position they're in, but also to be trained at the same time to be able to take on any job when called upon.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sims, same question. How would you handle staffing shortages and overtime costs?
Well, it would begin with an evaluation of the agency, every aspect of it. See what is currently being done, what's working, what's not, what changes need to be made, where we may be able to allocate resources differently. Also working with the reserve program. Reserve program is a volunteer service that supplements and augments patrol. So having a structure there where we can utilize reserve deputies to help with special details, who can help on patrol, who may be able to help in surveillance, areas that may be experiencing some drug problems or crime problems or things of that nature. Then the reserve program could also augment patrol and do that. So shifting resources to where the need is, the only way you can do that is by looking at what you're currently doing and seeing what needs to be used where. But also, as far as overtime and money, going after state and federal grants to help bring in extra equipment training. But that's also some areas where you can pick up personnel that can help to put more officers on the streets to handle the different situations out there. So it's very important to work with the state and federal folks, see what money is available, and that will help offset our budget woes should we have any in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Sims, describe your law enforcement managerial experience.
Well, I have 38 years of experience in law enforcement. I started with the Hattiesburg Police Department, worked my way up through the ranks, served as a shift supervisor, training coordinator, director over training, worked in various divisions, worked my way up to assistant chief and chief of police. So I dealt with budgets, I dealt with personnel issues, I evaluated operations to ensure their effectiveness and their efficiency. Did the same thing in the police corps, starting out as a coordinator in training and working my way up to a position where I was director over the National Staff Development, where I traveled to 27 different states and make sure operations within the academies were consistent nationwide. And then my current position is Assistant Director of Public Safety at Forrest General. So I've always been in positions where, you know, I want to exceed. I'm not satisfied with status quo. I'm constantly striving to improve. My leadership style is dependent on, you know, the level of competency of the individuals and the situations that I'm confronted with. So I believe in a situational type leadership where, you know, I'm not going to treat a 6-month rookie like I am a 6-year veteran. It's going to depend on their level of competency. I'm going to work to develop each one to that level that they can take my job at one day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sims. Mr. Oswalt, describe your law enforcement managerial experience.
Well, they already explained that I don't have any law enforcement experience. My experience is more in the real world and not so much as in the world of politics. I have dealt with public and community service work 50 years plus. I've been in numerous businesses that I've started and succeeded in and sold and moved on to other things. My experience in law enforcement, I have not had any at this present time, but I look forward to the opportunity of doing so. I intend to learn everything that I can. I've studied, pretty independently studied law quite a bit. I do know quite a bit about the law, and I do know how to make decisions. I do know about management, managing people on large quantities. I've had businesses that I've had several employees on that I have to manage and manage presence with. I'm very familiar with managing budgets and people, and look forward to the opportunity of being able to serve as next sheriff of Forrest County, and further out the time that I would be in that position to learn even more. And I do believe that I'm qualified. I do believe that it's a job that I can and will handle, and I will rise to the needs of the people. And I will listen to people who have been there. I will listen to people that have been there and been involved for a long time. Because I don't think we ever get too old to learn, regardless of what areas that it may be in. That being said, I mean,
Thank you very much, Mr. Oswalt. I have been informed that Mr. Johnson is on his way, so we will just have him join us where we are. I'm going to add his chair and his placard back, and he will just be number 3 in our lineup. Question, you will get the next question, and we will rotate the first person to get the next question after that. And then at the end, we will have 5 minutes for your closing remarks. So your question is, how would you describe your law enforcement managerial experience?
As I describe my law enforcement management activity, it's pretty good. You do have some good citizens in Forrest County, but you also have some bad citizens. But my God and spirits, man, have been a good 23 years for me.
All right, thank you very much. As I said, now that we're not going back and forth, we have our candidates 1, 2, 3. The next question will start with candidate 2, and we will just keep rotating from there. So, Mr. Oswalt, you will start our next question. There has been rumored corruption within the sheriff's office currently. How do you plan to handle that and make sure there is no unequal treatment in personnel?
Well, I believe in leadership by example, and to have a good understanding from the very start. This is a serious job. I take anything I do serious, very serious. I never lay my hand on the Bible and say no to do a job and allow corruption, commit corruption. And I would like to call the entire staff together and inform them that would be the new sheriff in town. I believe in towing the line, walking the line, and I wouldn't expect anything and demand no more than just that. I would demand from my officers and my staff to follow the same rules. I believe in the will of the law, and I believe strongly believe with all my heart that no one is above the law, and especially the law. Because we take an oath and swear on an oath to the people that elect us that we will enforce the law fairly across the board to each and everybody. I would not expect any less out of an officer, and I would let them know from day one that it's something that would not be tolerated in my administration. I would not. I mean, I can understand anybody making a mistake, but the mistake of them know what kind of mistake it is. If it's something that can be fairly and justly discussed is one thing, but outright corruption is something I will not tolerate, not for 1 second.
Thank you very much. Mr. Johnson, I will send the same question to you. There has been rumored corruption within the sheriff's office currently. How do you plan to handle that and make sure there is no unequal treatment in personnel?
The best way to handle corruption in the sheriff's office, you don't have an inner circle. You eliminate your inner circle. You hire some officers that you can trust, some that you know that will get out there and do the job fair and be fair to the public as well. So once you eliminate that inner circle and you include the citizen into everything you do at the sheriff department, that will help the sheriff department 100%.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sims, there has been rumored corruption within the sheriff's office currently. How do you plan to handle that and make sure there is no unequal treatment in personnel?
Well, we get into this profession to serve. Law enforcement officers accept the responsibility of the law enforcement officer of public trust. So, like Mr. Oswalt said, you put your hand on the Bible and you take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, the state of Mississippi, and to serve the public out there. And that's an oath to God. So we take that seriously. But the leadership at the Sheriff's Department has to make sure that they establish a culture, one that is not going to tolerate that, establish a culture that is geared toward courtesy, respect, service. You instill that in the people. You hold them accountable to it. You expect it out of them each and every day. They learn to accept that, and they then take that same culture, that same mindset, and they extend it to the public who they're out there serving. So you get trust that's built between the deputies, the other personnel, and the public out there, and you're going to get unity that way. So while we're establishing that culture and telling the folks what we expect, we're also training. We're getting them to where they know what their job entails, how to do it safely, how to do it professionally, how to do it with courtesy and respect, and you empower them. You give them the decisions to make that says, you know, when I go out there and I come across a problem, if I look at it and it's ethical, my decision is ethical, it's legal, it's moral, it's within policy and procedure, it's, you know, all those things, if I can answer yes, then I just do it. And if I empower the deputies to do that, they're going to serve the public well.
Thank you very much. Mr. Johnson, you will start our next question. Could you, as sheriff, have any control over mental health issues locally? If so, how?
Well, as sheriff, you do not have any control over mental health. That's when your medical field comes in use. But as sheriff, you can try to get to know the people that's having mental health and become their friend as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Sims, could you, as sheriff, have any control over mental health issues locally? If so, how?
Absolutely. In fact, we have a program in Forrest County, CIT, Crisis Intervention Team, where the officers are trained on how to go in, recognize some of the symptoms, can evaluate an individual. Their goal is to, you know, through their training, they learn de-escalation techniques, so they de-escalate the individual on the scene, see what kind of services they may need. It may just be that, you know, they take medication and they've gotten off their medication schedule, or they couldn't refill a prescription, so we get them the help they need to get that regulated again. If we can't de-escalate on the scene, then you have the option of calling an MCERT team in through Pine Belt Mental Health, where mental health professionals can come out and look and see what they may be able to do to assist in that situation. If it's a situation where you may convince the individual to voluntarily go with you to a single point of entry where they evaluate them and they can divert them to whatever help they need. And through this program, the officer can also detain them and get evaluation done to see if, you know, place a 72-hour hold to see if commitment is an option that's needed to help this individual out. Bottom line is, you get the officers trained, they can go out, they can find the individuals, they can deal with the individuals, they can de-escalate or divert them to the services they need to get the help they need.
Thank you very much. Mr. Oswalt, could you, as sheriff, have any control over mental health issues locally? If so, how?
First of all, I would like to be able to work with the state legislature level as to try and get more, have more options for them in the townspeople. They're out in the streets and in the homes and the woods and the bridges. I've been that's what I do at the current time. I've been involved in this for the past 16 years. I deal with the minimum challenge each and every day, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And when you run across situations Mr. Sims was just speaking of, which I definitely agree with what he was saying, is there's a right way and there's a wrong way to approach people that have mental conditions. And there's a lot of times it is because of medication that they've not been on, or maybe they need an adjustment on medication in some way or another. But the thing about it is the way you approach that is like approaching other situations I would imagine in law enforcement. There's a right way and there's a wrong way. And first of all, if you got a soft voice, you talk, and when you talk, you let them know that you're concerned. You make them feel like that they're cared for, and they're needed, and they're wanted. And that way you can, after my experiences, I've won people over a lot of times like that without ever having to call law enforcement to the scene. I have an advantage on that because, like I said, I've been doing it for 16 years. But our legislators we need to be able to work with legislators to get them to provide funds that we can do things to help to get some of these people off the streets. Jim Hood said over 2 years ago, if this city doesn't do something about the mental crisis and the homelessness on the streets, that we're going to have a public safety problem like we've never seen before. I totally agree with that. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not going to be a Democrat.
Thank you, Mr. Oswalt. Mr. Sims, you have the next question. If you are elected sheriff, what are your main goals to have accomplished for Forrest County by time of re-election?
Well, that's a lot. Like I said, establishing a new culture, evaluating the operations, making sure that things are running effectively and efficiently, opening up the lines of communication, transparency within the department, not just not dictating what the public's going to get from the sheriff's department, but actually listening to them, finding out what their concerns are, listening to them, and then addressing those problems. To me, that is one of the biggest issues. So we've got to start communicating with the public, building the trust up there. There's a drug problem in Forrest County right now. And with that drug problem, there are a lot of crimes that are associated with it. And it's frustrating the communities out there. Crimes are being committed to help fund some of the habits out there. And if we don't get rid of those that are selling and distributing and manufacturing this stuff, it's always going to be available, and it's just going to be a vicious cycle. So we've got to concentrate on those that are selling this poison in our community and get rid of that. Those are the biggest issues for me: transparency, communication, getting a handle on the drug problem. That's what I'm going to concentrate on first.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. Mr. Oswalt, if you are elected sheriff, what are your main goals to have accomplished for Forrest County by time of re-election?
Well, I intend to set a new bank and to lead by that example. As I said before, let each and every one know. I'm not going to go in as a liar, kicking doors down, trying to act like I'm a bad dude. I want to go in, I want to make a change. I want to do things that are right, regardless of what the debate may be. I want to do what's right, and I will stand by what's right. As I got on my sign, I will stand for what's right, even if I have to stand alone. And I will convey that to our people. I will encourage our guys and help in any way that I could with anybody that's having any kind of problem. I would be transparent. A crystal clear transparency would be in the office. I always keep my cards on the table. I would never do anything that I'd be afraid somebody would find out about later on. I will make sure that my staff, my officers, go by the same rules, same code. I would, as I say, I would not tolerate anything less than that. I want our officers to be mentors to our people. I want our people to be able to understand in our communities that the law enforcement officers are your friend and not your enemy. But we got to come together. We got to unite together, because if we're united together and we work together, there's no one sheriff's office or sheriff that can solve all the problems. No one community, no one church, no one anybody. But if we come together and unite together as a sheriff's department, a law enforcement agency, we get out there and let people know, look, I'm your friend. I'm here to serve you and to protect you. I'm not here to hurt you. But if we can hear from the people and find out what their ideas and suggestions are, and we can come together, small, large businesses and all, we can come together and unite. We can achieve many, many goals.
Thank you, Mr. Oswalt. Mr. Johnson, if you are elected sheriff, what are your main goals to have accomplished for Forrest County by time of re-election?
My main goal to accomplish would be to bridge that gap in the sheriff department between the officers, and bridge that gap between the sheriff Department and the citizens of Forrest County. The main goal is to make sure that the citizens of Forrest County have their trust and are built in the sheriff department. You should know each and every one of your deputies in your community. There's no excuse for not to know who's on the sheriff department and who's not. Every deputy should get to know their community. So my biggest problem is that the sheriff department just don't lost touch with the citizens. And I'm planning on bringing that back and bridging that gap back together.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. The next question is for Mr. Oswalt. Do you agree with the community-oriented policing philosophy, and if so, how do you see the Sheriff's Office adapting the philosophy of community policing to a rural county setting?
Well, first of all, is, like I said, with the sheriff's department, getting out of that office, getting out of whatever, and get out among the people, get to know the people, get to know the communities, hold town meetings, town hall meetings, call on them to call us. We will set a date, time, and place on a monthly basis to meet up and to be there. The sheriff and the staff needs to go out to these town hall meetings, sit down with the people and be there to answer questions, but otherwise turn the platform over to people. Give the people a voice where they can voice their opinions, their suggestions, their complaints, whatever they want to talk about. I want to know as a sheriff, I want to know what the people think. I'm not so much as interested in what the people in the upper echelon think. I want to know what you think. I want to know what each individual, what do you think we could do to enhance the service and protection in your community? You live here, I'm all ears. I want to hear your suggestions. Talk to me, and let's come together. Let's work together. Let me tell you something. You can do more with two heads than you can one a lot of times. Sometimes you can. But the more people in our communities and our county that we get involved with the department, and let's work together, the more we'll achieve in Forrest County and enhance the living, the safety, and the service for all of Forrest County, for all people, not just for some. And as this gentleman just said a minute ago, if I'm sheriff, there ain't going to be no such thing as an inner circle. They're going to be the sheriff and the people that's below me, and they're going to follow the rule or they'll find another job. But the main thing is the people out here. I don't remember hearing, and I haven't heard in my lifetime, very many sheriffs that run around and say, well, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think we could do to enhance safety and protection? That's what I want to hear from. I want to hear from you, the people. I want you to know that the sheriff's office belongs to you. It doesn't belong to the out here.
Thank you, Mr. Oswalt. Mr. Johnson, do you agree with the community-oriented policing philosophy? And if so, how do you see the sheriff's office adapting the philosophy of community policing to a rural county setting?
Yes, I do agree with it. Community policing is the best way to police. If you're doing community police, like I illustrated a while ago, you don't know everybody in the community that you patrol. And I don't believe in putting one deputy in one area for 13 years. A deputy been with the sheriff department that long, she's been able to work the whole time. So, once again, I am a community police at the Forrest County Sheriff Department. But I have been working Glendale and Ross Spring for 13 years. Some of you may know me, some of you may not. That's because I've been in one spot for 13 years. Community policing, Ross Spring and Glendale know me. Anywhere else outside the county, they don't know me. So I do believe in community policing.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Sims, do you agree with community-oriented policing philosophy? And if so, how do you see the sheriff's office adapting the philosophy of community policing to a rural county setting?
Absolutely. And of course, it starts with, again, that culture that you build. You want deputies to be proactive, not reactive. You don't want them just sitting in the car waiting for a call to come over the radio. You want them out actually in the community, driving down the road. They see somebody out, on the tractor, in their yard, doing something, they stop and they have a conversation. It doesn't have to be a 20-minute conversation or an hour conversation. It may be a 5 or 10-minute where just introduce yourself, ask them if they've got any issues, any problems, anything we can help you with, and then get back in and start patrolling. But it is getting that mindset to where you're not just there to do your shift and go home. You're there to actually get out, interact with the community, and find out what's going on. Absolutely, community meetings are important, but you want the deputies, in the areas to know, when the volunteer fire department is meeting. Go sit in on the meeting. Go by the schools. Maybe there is a staff meeting going on that they can stop and spend 5 minutes to introduce themselves and see what's needed at the school. All kinds of ways that you can interact with the public to find out what's going on, what's happening, but also to introduce yourself and to start building that trust to where they know the deputy by name, and they don't mind calling on them, asking them a question, or give them information if that's what it is that may help solve that crime that's been plaguing a certain community or something.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. Our next question is for Mr. Johnson. What do you think about the idea of consolidation of services with other counties or other jurisdictions?
The idea of consolidating with other counties, other jurisdictions, it can be to the benefits. Helping each other, that would work better than consolidating. That's the reason why you have the counties and other jurisdictions divided. So I wouldn't want to consolidate. I would say let's everybody help everybody.
Thank you. Mr. Sims, what do you think about the idea of consolidation of services with the other counties or other jurisdictions?
Well, I'm not sure about consolidation of services. If we're talking about a cooperative spirit where we're sharing information, maybe sharing resources like the Metro Narcotics, where you have different jurisdictions who have personnel, equipment that are used to work, and those agents work in different areas to try and solve drug problems. I'm all for that. Central dispatches, some areas it's worked, some it hasn't. But that's where, again, you come in and you evaluate and you find out what the best fit is for our community. What's needed for our community? What's going to help, our citizens? What's going to help our deputies, our personnel do the best job possible? Again, crime and drugs have no jurisdictional boundaries, so the more cooperation you have between different agencies, the better results you're going to get. I'm all for that. I'm not sure I agree with the consolidation term.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. Mr. Oswalt, what do you think about the idea of consolidation of services with other counties or other jurisdictions?
Well, consolidate or cooperate. I would vote for cooperate. I don't think I would want consolidation. I believe that all counties around probably would feel the same as I would, that we need each other, and when we need each other, and we do a lot of times, is to cooperate and join with each other and for the same common goal, and that is to fight crime. Whatever it takes, whatever resources that we have, if another county has more resources to handle a certain problem that we have in this county, I would hope they would be willing to cooperate rather than consolidate and come to our aid and help us out. I know if it was in reverse, Forrest County had resources or equipment that was needed somewhere else, I never hesitate to do that. And join forces with our partner law enforcement agencies around the state, wherever it may be. I would always want to be cooperative rather than consolidate. I just don't really think I would be real crazy about that idea at all.
Thank you, Mr. Oswalt. Our next question is for Mr. Sims. What is Forrest County's most pressing law enforcement issue?
Again, in campaigning the last 9 months, talking to different people in the communities, it seems to be drugs. That's something that everybody is on everybody's mind. The crimes associated with it, like I said, there's a lot of petty thefts going on, lawnmowers, weed eaters, things of that nature, all the way up to four-wheelers and boats and cars, and most of that is associated with drugs in this community. So I think that is probably the most pressing issue, and it's one that we've got to get a handle on. Again, working with Hattiesburg, Petal, Lamar County, Jones County, all the surrounding counties, and then even bringing in state and federal agencies to tap in on those resources to help us get a handle on that. I think it's just been overlooked too long in Forrest County. I think things have been kind of concentrated on in the city, but the outer limits of the county, in the rural areas, it's just kind of been free trade out there. And people need to know that that's not going to be tolerated. We've got to do something about it. We've got to get to work on it. Working with other agencies, I think, will benefit us. But also making sure the deputies are talking with the community, finding out where it's happening, then setting up the surveillance and verifying, and then moving in with investigations to help eliminate that. That's what we've got to do. That's, to me, the number one issue.
Thank you. Mr. Oswalt, what is Forrest County's most pressing law enforcement issue?
Well, I would agree that drugs is probably one of the most pressing issues in Forrest County right now. But quote a scripture from the Holy Bible that says, "For the love of money is the root of all evil." And what we need to do is evaluate, sit down and really evaluate the many, many different crimes that we got that's going on in our communities now, and take the worst of the worst, and start there and work on the toughest issues that face our county, and work down to the ones that are not so severe. And I was always a believer in taking your toughest challenges first. Don't put them on the back burner, take the easy stuff now and the harder stuff later. We can't afford to wait. We've got people out on the streets living under bridges and in the woods everywhere. We've got homeless people. We've got drug people that's selling the drugs to people that are out here on the streets. It's all a problem. The drugs is a problem. The homeless is a problem. The mental people out on the streets, it's all a problem. How do we solve that problem? By coming together and really talking about it, and we're taking the tough challenges first and doing what we have to do and address those issues first. If you cut the head off the giant, you got no problem with the rest of them.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, what is Forrest County's most pressing law enforcement issue?
The most problem with Forrest County, it's not going to be your drug dealers. It's going to be your drug users. So we need to try to get a program to get the drug users rehabilitated. If you get them rehabilitated and get them off of drugs, drug dealers ain't going to have nobody to sell them to. So let's work on getting the drug users rehabilitated. Let's do what we can to help them. Because they on drugs don't make them a bad person. They just make bad choices. So I would focus more on rehabilitating the drug users.
Right. This will be our final round of questioning so that we have time at the end for your closing remarks. And this is a question submitted from the public. Mr. Oswalt. In the wake of all the sheriff's elections, a concern has been over the corruption that has plagued the Forrest County Sheriff's Office, especially involving Charles Bolton and the food theft at the jail. What are some measures you will take to assure this type of thing will not happen again?
Well, first of all, I would be the type of sheriff and look at all invoices on a regular basis. I would be someone that would know where the money that's allocated to the sheriff's department, where it goes. I would not want to take secondhand information on somebody else coming to me telling me, well, this much is for this. I want to know for myself. I'm going to look for myself. I'm going to look at the invoices. I'm going to know what's going on. I couldn't accept an excuse from anybody by a sheriff saying that I don't know what my chief deputy is doing. If you're a sheriff and a full-time sheriff, and you're going to be a full-time sheriff in Forrest County, you got to stay on top of everything. You got to know what's going on. There's no excuses in my book that a sheriff shouldn't know what's going on in his own department. I would let people know right off, like I said, right from Jump Street. I would be the type of sheriff that everybody will know, and they will know if I'm elected, that I won't be in there very long before they know that I'm not one that's going to tolerate this sort of thing. I'm not going to tolerate misconduct. I'm not going to tolerate corruption. And whatever I have to do to annihilate both, I'm going to do. I mean, if that means changing personnel and hiring new ones, that's exactly what I do. I'm not going to play no favorites. I don't have no special interest groups. I finance my own campaign. I'm willing to donate part of my salary to, like our reserves. The attorneys hit on something a while ago. That's a very important issue. Our reserves. Our reserves don't get paid. They're volunteers. They put their life on the line just like paid deputies did. I would want to help them buy their equipment so that they don't have to put out money for equipment. Also, utilizing them to ride with deputies, regular deputies in cars instead of having one deputy per unit, having two, and utilizing them in other ways, training them in ways to learn them how to become narcotics agents.
Thank you, Mr. Oswalt. Mr. Johnson, in the wake of all the sheriff's elections, the concern has been over the corruption that has plagued the Forrest County Sheriff's Office, especially involving Charles Bolton and the food theft at the jail. What are some measures you will take to assure this type of thing will not happen again?
Well, when you're the sheriff, you're supposed to know everything that's coming in and going out. You know, as the sheriff, I will make sure that I look at all invoices. And I will make sure I read everything before I sign it. So if you don't read anything and you don't keep up with what your chief deputy is doing, then that's on you as the sheriff. So what I would do is make sure I know what my chief deputy is doing at all times. You know, I don't have trust in him, but I still want to see his paperwork.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Sims, in the wake of all the sheriff's elections, a concern has been over the corruption that has plagued the Forrest County Sheriff's Office, especially involving Charles Bolton and the food theft at the jail. What are some measures you will take to assure this type of thing will not happen again?
Well, I agree with you, Jerry. Your passion really comes out. But it's absolutely, the sheriff has his hands on what's going on. He has policies and procedures in place. He has processes in place that ensures there's oversight. So it's not just, giving somebody the responsibility and never checking their work or making sure that everything is being handled properly. It's the sheriff's responsibility to run that department. Now, you're going to delegate responsibility and everything else, but you don't lose touch. That's why I've said from the beginning, I won't have a chief deputy. That puts a barrier between me and what's going on in that department. So my department will be structured in such a way to where, I have the final say. I'll have people in positions that are handling, different divisions and tasks. But at the end of the day, they'll answer to me. They'll keep me informed of what they're doing, how they're doing it, and there'll be checks and balances in place.
For our closing remarks, we will begin with Mr. Johnson, followed by Mr. Sims, and then ending with Mr. Oswalt. Mr. Johnson, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
All right. For you, the ones that don't know me, I am Lieutenant Johnson. I am a resident of Forrest County. I've been a Forrest County deputy for the past 13 years. I'm running for sheriff to make better changes. If you elect me, you'll be electing an honest, fair sheriff. So, Lieutenant Johnson, independent, November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Sims, you have 5 minutes.
Well, I want to thank the J.C.'s for hosting this tonight, giving the public a chance to listen to different candidates. Congratulate Miranda back there, who was recently elected to a national position. That speaks well of our community. I've been campaigning for this for the last 9 months. I ran for this office 4 years ago because I believed that the county was in need of change. And I'm not talking about just change for the sake of change, but I'm talking about real change, positive change that would help this community go to the next level. I think this sheriff's department can be the best of the best. This community is one of the best communities in the state of Mississippi. The people that live here believe in this community. They raise their family here. They spend their money here. It's a close-knit community. You know, when things happen, it always comes together and works very well to address whatever is needed. The sheriff's department can be an integral part of that. And that's what I've campaigned on the last 9 months. I believe that, you know, as sheriff, I can institute a culture that will be one that will serve the citizens well. We'll have professionally trained deputies out there patrolling. They will have the community's interest at heart. They will receive the training and the equipment they need to do their job professionally and to do it safely. And I think that's important for the sheriff. And that culture that's established will be something that they take and they serve the community with. The transparency and communication has been a big part of my campaign. I think, you know, making sure we listen to the community, listen to their problems, listen to their concerns and address those is very important and something that has been overlooked with our current department. That's something that's important to me. It was a cornerstone of my administration at Hattiesburg, and you should expect nothing less of it of me as the sheriff doing the same thing. The community has a right to know who's been arrested and for what crimes are being committed and where, and then what we're doing to address those crimes. You know, what's our clearance rate? You deserve to grade us and make sure we're doing our job. Hold us accountable for serving you. We work for you. The transparency, like I said, opening it up to make sure you know what's going on, what our sheriff's department is doing, what it's doing to serve you, what kind of prevention programs we have out there, and everything else. Those are the kinds of things that are important. But as the sheriff, you know, I also have to be responsible for your money. You have to have trust in me to know that I'm spending your money responsibly. That I'm not just throwing money away, but I'm spending that money to make sure the officers have the training they need, they have the equipment they need. We're doing what we need to do to serve you. I'm also responsible for trying to help offset some of those costs. So that's where, you know, getting those state and federal grants is my responsibility, and that will help offset some of the tax burden out there and get us those things that will make us better. And also part of that fiscal responsibility is making sure I constantly evaluate to make sure I eliminate any kind of waste that's going on. You know, I got to make sure we're running effectively and efficiently, and if there's any waste or anything else, I'm not doing my job right. And so I'm responsible for making sure that we take care of you. Folks, I got into this profession 38 years ago to serve. I love this community. I grew up in law enforcement here. Great mentors as Dempsey Lawler, Keith Obrey, Lee Shelburne, Wayne Landers. You know, they helped to mold who I am and what I do as a law enforcement officer, and the service to this community is important to me. And having that foundation, having those core values instilled in me, to where when I get up and I put on a badge and a uniform, and knowing that I'm going out to make a difference, that keeps me going. So I would humbly ask for your support on November the 5th, your prayers, your support, most importantly your vote. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. Mr. Oswalt, you have 5 minutes.
Our Constitution has 3 words. They're all capitalized. And it says, "We the people," not we the politicians. Politicians has held offices on the federal, state, and local level 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I don't believe in unlimited terms in an elected office. I advocate for term limits. I think 8 years is like our president, governor. I don't think anybody else should have any time longer. That being said, law enforcement can be a career thing for law enforcement officers, but people in leadership, we need to change once in a while. And we're in a time right now, it's a very crucial election, that we need change, we need complete and total change. We need a new path. We've been going down the same old path for so many years and been promised the same old empty promises over and over and over. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of that. I'm sick of career politicians. And I'm talking about it again, I reiterate. That's in leadership positions. I think the leaderships need to be changed. We've got law enforcement officers and agencies out there, it's fine. But politicians want you, the people out here, they want you to believe that they're the only ones that's qualified to run and operate a public office. Nothing can be further from the truth, brother. Our forefathers that founded this country all had day jobs. They weren't politicians. And we need leadership. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody that's a career politician is bad. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I don't believe in people having a position where they're in that office, hold that office for 25, 30, 40 years. I really believe that we need some changes once in a while. And I bring with me a new perspective and down a new path, a brighter path. I believe in being transparent with the people. I believe in serving the people. I believe that we the people, we need to stand up. And we need to take back what belongs to us, we the people. We need to take back the sheriff's office, not only the sheriff's office, but we need to take back the governor's mansions, the legislators, presidents, all the congressmen and all. People need to realize that we don't have the control that we need because we follow the same old election after election. I've got nothing against anybody that's in this race now that was in this race. Got the highest regard for each and every one of them. But I like them. I feel like my plan is going to be a better plan because I'm going to listen to the people. I want to know what the people has to say. I want to know what the people think. I want to get insight from the people that's out here every day that live in communities that a lot of them may be afraid to walk out their front door. I want to make a difference to where and come together with the people where they can feel safer coming out their door, their child walking down to the corner drugstore or grocery store. I want our youth, I want to be able to give our youth something to do, to get it to where they're not just sitting around idle or running around with people that's in the trouble. I want to get them to have an alternative. And by starting a cadet program for the the youth of our county, we may be able to achieve just that by being taught by good, honest, hard-working law enforcement officers that will become mentors to our youth that's out here and give them some respect. I've always been told, you're not owed respect, you earn respect. And when we show these kids that come into such a program that we respect you, but we want you to be law-abiding citizens, that does something to a child. That makes them feel important, like they do mean something, rather than just throwing their lives away or going into a world of drugs. You give them a goal to shoot for, and you reward them by giving these rank through merits, giving them something to do at the end of the year for earning their merits. It's our people, folks. That's what we need to be the most concerned.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oswalt. On behalf of the Hattiesburg JCs, I would like to thank everyone for coming out tonight, especially all three of our candidates for giving their time and answering questions for us. I do hope you leave here feeling more informed come November 5th. If you would like to share a video of tonight's events, that will be up on the JC page by sometime tomorrow. If you want to share with anyone who's not able to be here tonight. Thank you very much for coming out.